Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wiseguy Show, right here on the Writer Albert Lanier channel. The Wiseguy Show. I'm not a wise guy, but for all intents and purposes, I serve as one right here on YouTube and only on YouTube. Anyway, here with another edition of the Wiseguy Show. It's week 12 of that sports league known as the National Football League, week 12 of NFL action. And it was a very good week 12. There were some very good games, some interesting games, a couple overtime games, at least a couple overtime games, and a couple very good games. Um, I've said this for the 2025 season, and if there are people who want to take issue with it, they can. There's been at least a great game, if not an excellent game, every week in the 2025 season. There's been at least an excellent game, at least a great game. And this week was no exception. So, without further ado, let's get to the games. Of course, one of the big games of the week, the Colts-Chiefs game. Now, I said this when I was doing my NFL Hot Topics segment on the Writer Report. By the way, if you haven't checked that out and you haven't checked me out on the Writer Report, go to mixlr.com. That's mixlr. That's mixlr.com and listen to the Writer Report. I'm on the Writer Report on Mondays. I forget what episode that is because it's different episodes, but you're going to have to find that out yourself. Sorry. But that's the Writer Report, RYDER report. I'm on there on Mondays, and I've been doing NFL Hot Topics segment since the early weeks, week 3 specifically. So anyway, as I was saying, I said that on the show, and one of the things that I said about the Colts-Chiefs game, or actually about the Kansas City Chiefs, is the Chiefs are one of those teams that the powers that be in the sports media world, hello to those out there in the chat. The Chiefs are one of those teams that have been the target of relentless cheerleading in the professional sports media world. And it's been absolutely horrendous. One of the things that I've said, and I'm going to keep saying, is the Chiefs are a mediocre team this year. They barely had a good record at one point. And they're simply not a good team. They won games last year that they should not have won. I don't even think they were that great last year. They just were fortunate, won a lot of games. Some people would say that the referees favor them. Let me put it this way. There was a game that they played where they had no penalties this year. There was a game which the Chiefs had no penalties. I'll just leave you to think about that one. But anyway, the Chiefs are playing the Colts. I think this is one of those games that you kind of wait for during the season. And the Chiefs, again, are not a good team in my view. They can play well at times. And in this game against the Colts, and the Colts are a very good team, easily the best team in the AFC. So this was a clash, I wouldn't say of titans. I would say a clash of a new titan and a clash of an old titan that's kind of heading out the door. Yes. By the way, my thanks to, I think it's at boss U9X3W for your post. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Like and subscribe. I'm not one of those like and subscribe people. I never do that on this channel because I figure, number one, you're tired of hearing that on every damn YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Shut up already. So I never say that. But please listen. Go ahead and listen to what I believe it's Boss U9X3W says. Okay. I'll just stick with Boss U9X3W. My thanks. If you want, subscribe, and if you do, like. So like is good, or giving a like is good. So it's the only time I've ever said this in any one of my shows. But my thanks for letting me know about that. In any event, back to the show. The Chiefs are a mediocre team, and the Colts are an excellent team. But this was an excellent game. I think this was at Arrowhead, so I think it helped the Chiefs. And the Chiefs played one of the best games I've seen them play all year. I think they were, I mean, except for the beginning of this game where the Colts got an interception and they eventually got a touchdown, picked them home. This was the best that I've seen the Chiefs play all season. The best I've seen them as a team. They seemed more like a coherent and cohesive unit. And I use coherent and cohesive intentionally. I think that they were able to head down the field. They were able to, and it's not that they didn't have good games. I think they had a good game against the Bills and they ended up losing. But I think right now, when you look at the Chiefs, their backs are against the wall. They were 5-5 headed into this game. And they're in a position now where they have to fight to get into the playoffs. And they're used to being in the playoffs in the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era. And now they're a team, and I said this on the Writer Report, the sports media world and professional sports media world like to use scripts, like to kind of use a script or cast narratives in regards to football teams. I think for a sort of, it's almost like a storytelling kind of device. And what they've done, and I think with the Chiefs, what the narrative this year, if you want to go there, is this is a team that's now in a different position. They're trying to get to the wild card. They're trying to make it into the postseason. And so that's a more interesting narrative to me if you're going to create narratives for teams than the previous narratives in the past, which is, will the Chiefs, win out, win the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl again? This is a lot more interesting. The Chiefs played a really good game. They won it at the end. Do I think that they're going to make the playoffs? I really don't. I really don't think they're equipped to be in the playoffs. I just think this is a team. They played a really good game against the Colts here. I mean, they did. Absent, a couple of, the interception at the beginning. I really think even if the Chiefs make it to the playoffs, they're not really equipped. I think this team just doesn't have what it takes, even with all their success. I think last year was probably the luckiest year for them. And they were able to win. Moving on to some other games, you had the Steelers and the Bears in a battle, what was a battle of first place teams. Steelers no longer first place after a loss to the Bears. And this was a really close game. And unlike most of the Bears games, the Bears didn't win this offensively at the end. They won it defensively at the end, having to stop the Steelers who had the ball late in the fourth. And they were down by 3. And they managed to stop the Steelers at the end. The Bears are demonstrating that, they're a team. And I said this with their victory last week. And so with the Bears, they were able to score effectively. Actually, the Pittsburgh, they got a turnover against Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh was able to score. They were able to run the ball quite effectively against the Bears at times. And they came within 3. The backup for the Steelers, despite having an interception at least, had a pretty good day. I mean, he did a pretty decent job. Um, but the Bears ended up winning this in the fourth defensively, and the Bears are demonstrating that they can win games without something fortunate or lucky happening for them. I think that's the big deal. That's a huge deal for this Bears team, and so now it looks like this Bears team is going to be a possible force to reckon with in that division. And I think I had warned before, people should look out for the Chicago Bears. I've warned that previously, I believe, on this show. Um, the Ravens beat the Jets. And so now the Ravens, they've got a barely winning record now. And it looks like they've got the division lead there. They've come up, even though they haven't faced the Steelers yet. This is going to be interesting and the Ravens are another team, and they barely, and they won another game that wasn't great against the Jets. They did a good job. They managed to beat the Jets, but the reality with the Ravens is that they're a team that, I think a lot of people were saying they're going to win the division 1-5. Even though they've won games and they've come up, I still thought it was ridiculous to think that Baltimore is going to be a major contender. I think this is a team that's not good. They're mediocre and playing well at best. And right now, I think they're playing well enough to win games. They're playing well enough to win games. And I think it's going to be interesting when the Ravens and the Steelers meet, as they will later on. But the reality is, I don't really think the Ravens, even if they make it to the playoffs, even somehow if they manage to win the division and they go to the playoffs, I think it's still going to be the same old problems. And that is, people can get to Lamar Jackson. They can stop him. Their defense won't be much of a key, unfortunately. I mean, I think it's easy to beat. I think for the most part, you can figure out how to beat the Ravens, and that is you get to Lamar Jackson. You stop him from running, and keep in mind he's coming off a hamstring. You stop him from running. You get as many turnovers off of him as you can. You make him one-dimensional. Also, in the past, I would say you played them close, and then you won at the end. So that'll be very interesting. The Patriots barely got by the Bengals. And this was an interesting game. The Bengals played a good. I think if the Bengals defense were at least good, they'd have a chance against teams. And the Bengals played a fine game against the Patriots. The Patriots were able to pull it out. This is another close one. The Bengals had a pick six off of Drake May early on in this game. Of course, the Patriots got an interception too, got for a touchdown. But let me get to just a couple more games, and then we're going to head out. The Lions and the Giants had a close game. And the Lions started out, they had a tough loss to the Packers. Not a horrible loss, but it was a little tough because they were slowed down by the Packer defense. But I really want to talk about the Giants primarily. Giants played a good game against the Packers last week. And sometimes things weren't running patterns. Some people think it's suspicious. Others don't. At the end of the Packers game, they played a nice close game. I think this went into overtime. And the Lions were able to get a touchdown to lead in overtime, and then stopped the Giants. They were able to win by Aiden Hutchinson sacking Jameis Winston. Now, again, sometimes things repeat. Sometimes events occur that are repetitious. They're a little pattern. And the pattern, it seems, with the Giants is their offensive line can't keep their quarterback protected, especially in either late fourth or in overtime. because the same thing happened at the end of the Packers game last week. Defensive player for the Packers went and made a sack. Giants QB1. That player happened to be Micah Parsons. So in this game with the Lions, close game, they go to overtime, Lions lead in overtime, and they stop them defensively. Aiden Hutchinson goes after Jameis Winston and sacks him, thus ensuring the win for the Lions. Again, patterns happen in football, and this is the thing. And it's strange, but that was a good game. That ended up being a far better game. The Giants have played well. You know, the weird thing about the Giants this year, they're a bad team. But I'd rather people talk about the Giants a bit more, and they have at times, than they do the Ravens. And notice nobody gives them any support. No, they'll talk about the Chiefs, and I understand that because they're former Super Bowl champs. But the Ravens haven't won a Super Bowl in quite a while. And they haven't even gotten the Super Bowl under Lamar Jackson. And yet they keep being given the benefit of the doubt. I'd rather more people give the benefit of the doubt to the Giants, even though they're a bad team this year. They've been a bad team for a little while. For a couple seasons at least. They're a bad team this year. They're playing well at times. I mean, you had two good games here with the Giants, but they're not protecting their quarterback at the end. It ends on quarterback sacks, on QB sacks. And you can't have situations like that. I mean, this is the second week in a row for the Giants. The Giants aren't going anywhere. But if they're going to win games, that offensive line's got to step up and prevent plays like that being made, especially by stars. In this case, it was Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions. The past week, it was Micah Parsons. Next week, I don't even want to know what's going to happen. The next game, I don't even want to know. And then you had, I think, one of the best games of the week in the Eagles-Cowboys. That was a surprisingly great game. At the very least, extremely excellent. The Cowboys were down by 21 points in the first half, and they managed to score a touchdown. I mean, when you looked at the Cowboys in the first half of this game, the Eagles had this, it looked like it was going to be a blowout from the Eagles. The Eagles didn't score in the second half. They didn't score. They scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. One of the things that's running through my mind was the Eagles tend to get sluggish in the second half, and they don't really score as much. I wonder if that's going to happen here. And I was right. Now, Dallas's defense managed to contain them. They're not great defense, but they've gotten a little better over the year, a little better this season. But the reality is that the Cowboys, I hate to put it this way, but the death of their teammate, I don't really like cliches and sentimental stuff and nostalgic stuff. I'm not really one for all that. But this is a Dallas Cowboy team that seems to have come together partly because of tragedy. And they're playing with a great deal of motivation. And they're playing with a great deal of at least in the latter half of this game, consistency. They scored a touchdown at the end of the half to cut it to 14-point lead, a 2-touchdown lead. But Dallas, even despite the fact that Dak Prescott got intercepted in the end zone at one point, this was the Dallas team that just kept going, that just kept getting, and they got turnovers from the Eagles. Granted, these are rivals. These are teams that play each other fairly well. But I think the Eagles, as good as they've been this year, I think they're vulnerable. And I think they're vulnerable, one, because of their offense, but two, also because of what happens in the second half. And this was a big win for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I frankly am somebody who's not really seeing, even though I'm a Dallas fan, I'm a fan of 3 teams. I don't really see Dallas going to the playoffs, but I don't even think it matters at this point. I think they're playing with a great deal of uh, energy and with a great deal, and they're very motivated. It's sad that it took a tragedy to kind of help this, but this is a team that really seems to be powered at this very point. This seems to have found a second win. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the Thanksgiving Day game against the Chiefs. So we'll have to tune in for that. But that was easily one of the best games. A great comeback. I'd say it's one of the best comebacks of the season. I mean, you look at the Denver game, and you look at the Texans game. You have to include this Dallas Cowboys game. You know, they were down by 21 points and they came back 7 points in the first half, and then 14 points plus the game-winning field goal. Great comeback by Dallas. And that makes a great end to this edition of the Wiseguy Show. And so tune in for another editions, or check out really other editions, other episodes of the Wiseguy Show right here on the Writer Albert Lanier channel. You can check out episodes 1 through 11, meaning week 1 to week 11. Check those out if you haven't already. But this is the end of the Wiseguy Show, the show getting you wise to what's happening in the NFL right here on YouTube. Bye for now.